Do you have the time to listen to me whine about how fucking shit Halloween Ends was?
Good evening, I'm Michael Myers. I have enormous psychological problems, and I'm going to take them out on you.
Yes, hello, happy Halloween. It's your boy, Billy Joel Oststrong here. And I figured, what a better way to celebrate Halloween than to look at the franchise that basically has the same name. It's called Halloween. And look at the 13 movies that have been out from this franchise and rank them from worst to best. I'm including the newest trilogy and the 2 Rob Zombie movies, as well as the movie that had nothing to do with Michael Myers at all. So, you know how this works. Without further ado, let's just get it started with what I think is the worst one. You thought it was going to be obvious, but here we go, I'm not. Halloween Resurrection, which came out in 2002. This was actually kind of the end of the original Laurie Strode and Michael Myers story, as at the beginning Michael ends up going to the insane asylum that Laurie Strode has been put in and kills her, but that's not the whole main plot of the movie. The whole main plot of the movie is these college students get recruited by Busta Rhymes to go on this reality TV show where they kind of scour the Michael Myers house to just kind of see how messed up his childhood was and basically get into the head of why he was the way he was. My problem with this one is it's a good concept, but this just feels like if Scary Movie were to parody Halloween. Like, that's all this reads to me. Just the way Busta Rhymes goes out there and he's fighting Michael with these kung fu moves, to the way Michael Myers looks. It just feels so cheesy. Oh yeah, and of course the college students are all horny and just want to do nothing but fuck each other. Like, it doesn't play itself off as a horror movie. And I don't know, maybe its intentions were just like Jason X, where they weren't taking it seriously either, but I feel like with this good concept, they could have just done so much more with it, and yet they failed to do that, making it the worst entry in the franchise to me. Here's why I put Halloween 3 Season of the Witch as the second worst. It's because this is the oddball of all the movies, because it's the only movie that has nothing to do with Michael Myers. Because the original intention after Halloween 2, when the Michael Myers story ended, the Halloween movies were supposed to be these different things within each release, these different stories. So in this story, you got this company who's selling these masks that'll kill people who wear them, and of course, I think the big controversial thing was there's actually kids that die in this movie too, which back then it really wasn't a thing we saw. It's, again, an interesting take, but I don't think executed very well, but to me it's always been one of those so bad it's good movies, so that was another one of the main reasons I couldn't put it last, and I didn't want to put it last for the sheer fact that it had nothing to do with Michael Myers. Again, I just feel like with it being kind of the oddball in the Halloween franchise, it has no canon to any of these movies whatsoever. It's just kind of there, and as a one-off, I think it's okay, but nothing more than that. Then we have Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, Family is Forever. This one's all over the place, and if you don't know the history behind this one, Rob Zombie and the execs were very disagreeing on a lot of things, and they kept, decreasing the amount of time that Rob Zombie had to shoot this film, and Rob Zombie had a different idea to end it, and he even, at the beginning of the movie, paid homage to what Halloween 2 did after the original first movie, where it took place on the same night inside the hospital, but that turned out to all just be a dream from Laurie Strode, and now she's kind of going more and more insane because, well, she's just like, I can't believe I'm this psychopathic killer's sister and all this kind of stuff. And don't get me wrong, I really like the fact that we get to see Michael's mask rotting away and we finally get to see his face. But for the most part, this thing is just so over the place, and it leaves you with an unnecessary cliffhanger that really wasn't intended to be anything in the first place. Is at the end of the movie, Laurie Strode is sitting in the insane asylum, she gives you that sinister look into the camera, and it just ends there, because now Michael's dead, so no one has to deal with it. And I don't know, again, I feel like with the momentum he had riding from his first movie, from the reboot, that he could have done so much with his second movie, because at least with the first movie, he wanted to still follow the main story, just go more in depth in Michael's childhood as to how he became so insane and whatnot. But in the second movie, he had all the freedom in the world to create this new idea of what he wanted to do. He didn't have to follow the second movie. He just paid homage to it. He didn't have to do this and that. He could have came up with something different, and he kind of did. But also in this movie, I don't like Dr. Loomis in this one, because he goes from being Michael's doctor trying to stop him to basically just becoming this egotistical maniac himself after writing this book about Michael, and it just, I don't know, it all gets clustered together in its long, bloated runtime, and frankly is an unsatisfying ending. Then we have the new movie, Halloween Ends. There's a lot I want to say about this, because this whole movie was making it like this epic battle between Michael Myers and Laurie Strode to finally end things, but it ended up being a movie where you don't even really see Michael Myers all that much. We find out that he's been, for 4 years, just hanging out in the sewer underground, and nobody really, takes notice of that. Like, is he Pennywise the Clown? Why is he there? What is he doing there? And he becomes attached to this new guy who I can't even remember the name of because I just hated that movie so much. And he ends up stealing Michael's mask because apparently him and Michael have this personal connection, because this guy at the beginning, he was babysitting, and the kid he babysat accidentally died, and he's got that held over him, so he's kind of going mentally insane. So when he takes Michael's mask, he's going and he's killing the people in his life that, just were disrespectful to him, all this kind of stuff. Basically taking the reins from Michael Myers, but Michael would later kill him, and that would set up the battle we would get between Laurie Strode and Michael Myers, which was more kind of underwhelming than anything else, because all Laurie and her granddaughter did were just cut Michael's wrist, slit his throat, boom, he's dead, and then to make sure he didn't come back, they threw him in a wood chipper. It was like, that was the exciting ending you wanted. Like, again, I know they're trying to, put this B-plot story in to kind of fill more time and whatever, and it could have been executed well, but for the most part, I'm just kind of like, this isn't even a Halloween movie. This is just a different origin story of a different killer who now is also dead, and then we just so happen to have Michael Myers pop up and be the one to almost finish Laurie Strode off. It was just so weird, considering the second movie to me was a big improvement over what the first one brought. It was like, Halloween Kills was good, and I thought maybe, just maybe, with Halloween Ends, they can continue off that momentum, but somehow they got worse, and it was the worst of this newest trilogy. Then we have Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers. There's 2 different versions of this film. Both are weird in themselves. The theatrical cut, the director's cut. In one of the cuts, I can't remember which, I think it was the director's cut, Michael Myers has an offspring with his niece, which, if we all know, was Jamie from movies 4 and 5, because he was in this cult and he had to his niece. Something like that of the sort. It had something to do with this symbol, and in both theatrical cuts, or both cuts I should say, it's about that symbol, but in the theatrical cut we don't get the whole incest thing, thank God. But nonetheless, this movie is not good at all. Again, I feel like what it was trying to do was become this epic return of Michael Myers. I think the only good thing that comes out of it is it's Donald Pleasance's last movie as Dr. Loomis, a posthumous part of Dr. Loomis in this movie, so that was pretty cool, but he's barely in the movie in itself. And fun fact, Paul Rudd was in this movie. He plays Tommy, the little boy, now grown up. He's insane. I don't know. It's like Ryan Reynolds being in the Amityville Horror. You forget that pre-fame that some of your biggest named actors and actresses starred in these movies that you would never thought they starred in. Kind of also similar to how Jennifer Aniston was in the first Leprechaun movie, whereas now she's like this, multi-Oscar-winning artist or nominee and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, Paul Rudd is in this movie. Ant-Man, everybody. That's another good thing about the movie, I guess, but for the most part, it's jumbled and it's terrible. Then at number 8, I have the 2018 Halloween movie. The one that is basically the sequel to the original Halloween, but it's still called Halloween, which is weird to me, because if it's supposed to be from the first movie, or be a sequel to the original first movie, why not call the first movie in this new trilogy, like, Halloween Continues or Halloween Returns. Like, that kind of makes sense considering you had the other two as Halloween Kills, Halloween Ends. So you're saying that the movie named Halloween is a sequel to the original movie, also named Halloween. It can get very confusing, but in this movie, we see Michael returning, he escapes, and Laurie Strode, who's been kind of just hiding out and whatnot, so that way, she, has a plan if Michael comes to get her and all this stuff, and the story is about her granddaughter and her daughter and how they, find this stuff out, and by the end of the movie it's chaos and they think they killed Michael Myers by trapping him in this little basement area, setting the house on fire. But obviously, as we saw at the beginning of Halloween Kills, that did not happen. This one was okay with me, satisfying enough, I guess. One of my main problems was the kills were too predictable. I feel like with Michael Myers, he always had some creative sense in his kills, or at least in the good movies. He always would do something that would make you go, man, I didn't see that coming. But with this one, there was that woman who was sitting right by the window. I'm like, oh, he's just gonna bash her head into the fucking window, and of course that's what happened. It just all felt like it didn't freak me out, and it didn't keep me guessing because I kind of already knew what was gonna happen just from things that I've seen from the other movies before. It was just more cliched than anything else. But again, I don't really have a problem with this one over Halloween Ends, because at least this one was just trying to get you back into the, the story of what's going on and all that, so maybe them just being simple with certain things was the right way to go here. At number 7, we have Halloween 5. The Revenge of Michael Myers. This is after his return in Halloween 4, and now we see his little niece Jamie. She's kind of, gone off the deep end. She won't speak to anybody, and things just kind of get weird here. Even though Michael Myers usually doesn't kill kids, he's still trying to kill his, niece who's, 8 or 9, which played by Danielle Harris, by the way. And throughout this adventure, of course, we see more people close to Jamie get killed, and by the end of the movie, Michael does perish and all this stuff, and Jamie turns out to be okay. In a way, they never really explains what happened afterwards, because you do see her in Halloween 6, but Michael kills her at the beginning, and she ends up hiding the baby, and then he's going after that baby, because again, he's got to kill everybody in the bloodline. But yeah, again, I think with Halloween 5, it's not the worst thing I've seen. I feel like it could have been better, but they needed to find a way to conclude that portion of the story one way or another. Which leaves my number 6 pick to be Halloween 4, Return of Michael Myers. This one, I don't even know if it follows up after the second movie, because they never really explain how Michael can be alive when 1, he blew up, and 2, in the second movie, Laurie Strode shot his eyes out, and yet they're just perfectly fine. Whereas Dr. Loomis, he comes back, he's got burn marks on his face, on one side of his face, insinuating that, yeah, this is supposed to follow up Halloween 2, and after kind of the backlash Halloween 3 got because there was no Michael Myers, they decided to just make Halloween strictly about the story of Michael Myers, and they needed to find a way to continue it. And I guess they couldn't get Jamie Lee Curtis to come back at this point, so they decided, instead of him going after Laurie, they'll go after his niece, which named Jamie, played by, again, Danielle Harris in her acting debut. And in this one, we realize that Danielle Harris's character is adopted into this family, and, she just kind of feels like an outcast in the family, all this, that, and the other. And, yeah, I mean, it's your typical Michael Myers killing people movie. He even kills one of the legal guardians of Jamie, which is kind of unusual, but by the end of the movie, we find out what happens after she's done being chased. She ends up killing, I believe it was her mother or something like that, her adopted mother, kind of similar to how Michael killed his sister and whatnot, and that's when we realize, oh, she's gone a little insane. And then, like I said, in the 5th movie, she starts to not speak and all this kind of stuff, and it's just very scared, PTSD and all this kind of stuff. But in this movie, we see the bright little girl that's just trying to enjoy life, even though she's, knows she's adopted, and at least her sister doesn't really care about her, but then her sister and her kind of start bonding toward the time, right around the time that her sister gets killed, that is. And yeah, I mean, that's just basically the whole story at this point in time. They kind of had to restart with something else, and I think it does a nice job for that. I can sit down and watch Halloween 4, no problem. The top 5, I don't know how many people are going to really like the top 5, but I have Halloween H2O at number 5. This is the one where Jamie Lee Curtis made her big return, and this was teased as the end of the Michael Myers versus Laurie Strode kind of thing. This was supposed to end that era, and I guess it did, but it also didn't, because at the end of the movie, when Laurie cuts Michael's head off, we realized that it wasn't Michael at all, because in Halloween Resurrection, they let us know that, oh, Michael actually grabbed one of the people in the ambulance and, like, squeezed their throats so hard that it, like, smashed their vocal cords, and then he just put the mask on the guy. That way he knew that Laurie would kill him in some way, in which she cut the guy's head off. So, turns out Michael's not dead, even though he was supposed to be, but this was supposed to be the last movie with Laurie Strode until, like I said, she kind of makes a cameo right at the beginning of Halloween Resurrection. But I think for what this is, it's nice. It kind of plays off as more like a thriller than it does horror, because again, Michael doesn't necessarily look scary. Plus, if I remember correctly, Laurie's going by a different name, so that way Michael doesn't find her easy, but of course he always ends up finding her. That's just some of the interesting things about this movie. Again, it's not the perfect Halloween movie, but it would have been a satisfying ending had you have ended it there originally. Number 4 is Halloween Kills, the movie that came out last year. I really liked this sequel from the first movie in this trilogy. There was something about it. Again, it taking place in the hospital, basically the night of the whole events that took place from the first movie. Laurie's a little banged up, everybody's going crazy, all this kind of stuff, insanity ensues. We see returns of some of the older characters that popped up as kids in the older films, and by the end of the movie, pretty much a lot of people get killed off. The original characters, Laurie's daughter gets killed, and all this, and you know, it's just pandemonium by the end of it, and it really makes you want to be like, how does this end? And that's why it made Halloween Ends so intriguing for me to go into it, because I'm like, what's gonna happen? What's the plan here? It seems so exciting. Plus the kills in this movie, I loved the kills in this movie. Some of those kills were whereas I could expect what kills were going to come in the first movie, this movie I had no idea. There's this killer, we find out in Halloween Ends that this lady didn't really die, she's just in a wheelchair now and can't speak, but he takes this fluorescent light and just smashes half of it, and then stabs the woman in the eye with it, and you're just like, whoa, okay, I mean, he could have just hit her with it, or stabbed her in the chest with it, but he decided to just break it and stick it right through one of her eyes. Like, it's probably the most brutal movie of the 3 new ones, if I had to say, and it was definitely one that I really, really enjoyed. It really just, it really picked up where it needed to, and again, it made me have high hopes for the 3rd movie. Sadly, the 3rd movie didn't live up to the expectations. Number 3, here's where it might draw some controversy. I got Rob Zombie's Halloween here at number 3. I don't get the reason for the hate around this one, because I find it pretty interesting that Rob Zombie was willing to go more in-depth through Michael's childhood before we actually got to the whole Michael Myers, Laurie Strode thing. You know, because in the original Halloween, all we got was, it showed Michael killing his sister, his parents coming home, and they're like, oh my god, Michael, what did you do? And we're just led to believe that he's just this way for, no reason whatsoever, whereas in this movie, we see he grows up in this, household that is just very dysfunctional, and he deals with a lot of bullies and all this stuff, and it just leads to just him not giving a shit anymore. We get to see his first human kill when he kills those bullies that were making fun of him, and when his mother, which is played by Sherry Moon Zombie, ends up shooting herself, that's when we get to the actual story that we all wanted. We see Laurie Strode, all grown up in high school now, and Michael's now coming back after her. And I do like the homage having Daniel Harris in this movie as Laurie's friend. I thought that was pretty cool too, to get one of the actors from the original movies in there. That was, again, I really liked that homage paid there for Rob Zombie. And plus, I did really like Malcolm McDowell as Dr. Loomis. I felt like in this movie, he was basically doing what Don Pleasant's Dr. Loomis was, and that's trying to get to Michael, trying to kill him, because he's just too dangerous to be left alive and all this kind of stuff. Like, it still felt like Dr. Loomis. There wasn't any of this other bullshit attached to it. I thought it was really nice, and I was intrigued to see where Rob Zombie would continue his story afterwards. And yeah, again, his story didn't end well, but at least it started fine. At least he didn't screw much of this up. I mean, again, with this first movie, he just basically had to do what the first movie did, but go a little bit more in depth, and he did that. So 1 and 2 are obvious. Number 2 is the original Halloween 2 from 1981. This followed up the original movie, taking place on the same night. Laurie is in the hospital now after her injuries, but Michael is still out and about. They're still looking for him, and although not as entertaining as the first one, I can say, for it being a sequel to a pretty good original movie from the first one, it definitely would have been a good ending. You know, Michael gets blown up, him and Loomis are done, but at least Laurie's okay now. There's no more Michael to deal with. It just seemed like it was destined to be the perfect ending, and I think, again, some of the kills in this movie are nice. The hot tub kill is pretty brutal in itself. I don't know, I really feel like this isn't definition of a good sequel. Again, it's not great. I would say it definitely is a step down from the first movie, but at the same point in time, I don't know how you can get better with the first movie, because at number 1, the original one is just a classic in itself because it's so low budget, and when you think about it, it doesn't use a whole lot of, like, gore and violence to really scare you. Like, a lot of these kills, I mean, yeah, there's going to be blood in real life, but when you watch the movie, I don't even think there's, like, an inkling of blood in this whole entire movie. He stabs people, he's cutting people, and then one of my favorite, I think, Michael Myers kills of all time is when he kills that one woman's boyfriend, comes in with the sheet over his head and the glasses on, and then strangles her with the telephone cord. It's just so clever, and it's stuff like that that make you go, wow, this guy's doing all this just to kill these teenagers. Like, it's so funny in a way. Now, Michael Myers in this movie does kill dogs, so 0 out of 10 there, did not like that. And plus, I just feel like the shots in this movie are so eerie, because throughout most of the movie, you don't really see Michael Myers up close. There's that scene where he's stalking Laurie from the bush, and you can kind of make out what's going on here, but yet not fully. And even by the end of the movie, when he's chasing Laurie around, it's so dark and the mask is so pale that when he just comes walking up, it's just, there's something about it that's so intense and so freaky. And I think John Carpenter did this very well to, you know, scare you. Even though he didn't have a high budget to do much, it was just like, okay, we're going to find these different ways to do it. And it set it up so nicely and was, you know, the reason that slasher films are so popular nowadays. Even though I still think Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho paved the way for slasher films, Halloween was the one that really got them more into the mainstream, and more people wanted to see movies like that because it can just be so interesting the way you can take things. And I just think that trying to bounce off of this original movie here is such a hard thing to do, because now everything's so high budget and all this stuff that, you know, you can really do much more than expected. But I would think that if I were to make a Halloween movie, I would want the lowest budget possible, because then it would make me think a little bit more, alright, how do I do this? How do I do that? And what kind of, you know, lighting can we have here? What kind of scene can we make that feels just eerie and dark? Because that's what John Carpenter did, and he did an excellent job with it, and it's still the best Halloween movie to date. So yeah, that's it for ranking all 13 of the Halloween movies from worst to best. I'd really like to hear in the comments below what you have to say. What would your ranking look like? Or you can just tell me which one you think is the worst of the 13 movies, which one you think is the best of the 13 movies, and yeah, that's it. Hope you guys have a happy Halloween. Stay safe out there, wear your mask, and don't forget to check your candy for razor blades.
When you turn out the lights, you make me feel like it's